That's it. Well, good evening, everyone. I'm Kirsten Bennett, Chief Executive of Cambridgeshire ACAT, and it's good to see you all here this afternoon, or this evening even. Yeah, I've been going since this morning, but yeah, this evening I'll get it right. Particularly, I think, showing an interest in this project, which is a new project in Fenland. And Alison Brown, my colleague, is going to show some slides in a minute to explain, and then we will have plenty of time at the end where we can get into discussion and take your questions. So it's a new project for Fenland, but it is something we have been delivering in other parts of Cambridgeshire. And from our point of view as Cambridgeshire ACAT, we are pleased that we've now got the funding that we can actually start this winter delivering this programme in Fenland, because we were last winter, many people were asking us, oh, will you do this in Fenland? And we couldn't. So we're a charity, we had to go out and get the money first before we could start to actually do the work. So I think what we'll do, Alison, I'm not going to, because you've got most of what I could say in your slides, so I'm not going to say it twice. So shall we start with the slides, and then we'll have plenty of time at the end for all questions, and you can say where you come from and that kind of thing at the end. I'm sure we'll get into that. Okay.
Yeah, okay, let me just share my screen, get it organised. That one. Let's do that. Okay. Right. So you're all people based in or working in Fenland. So I think I don't need to explain to you at all probably that you know that Fenland is always sort of comparatively the poor relation in terms of its sort of outcomes for health and well-being, etc. You know, typically there's sort of lower paid jobs, lower educational attainment, lower paid occupation. So you know, as a district, it has it quite tough, and I think there are, you know, as it says on the slide there are some issues with sort of loneliness and low levels of volunteering, and that's something that's actually been recognised by the government. Fenland has been identified as one of the places they are sort of most concerned about, and they actually put some funding in place through DCMS. You can see there, and it was a fund called the Know Your Neighbourhood Fund. And the idea was that they wanted people to bring forward projects that would help address chronic loneliness and to encourage people to volunteer more in their local community. We bid for funding, and we were one of 9 projects in Fenland that have actually been successful. So you might see that Know Your Neighbourhood badge being, you know, touted about by other organisations who are also doing similar sorts of projects, similar but different. So the project that we've got is to establish 10 community living rooms, what we're calling community living rooms, in the Fenland district, and that's very much based, as Kirsten says, on the warm hubs model that we rolled out successfully last year, and that's now ongoing in East Cambridgeshire and South Cambridgeshire. I thought it might be quite helpful for you just to see what the impact of the warm hubs was in East and South Cambridgeshire, just to see, you know, this is what happened elsewhere, and this is why I think we're quite confident that this will work quite well in Fenland. So what you can see in East and South Cambridgeshire is that we set up 38 warm hubs, and you can see that they opened their doors for between November and March this year. They opened their doors for over 5,000 hours. And you can see down here that 16,500 visits were made to warm hubs. So, you know, we set them up because we thought that people might need somewhere warm to drop into if they were having trouble heating their homes. But what we've really found through this project is that people are coming along to those hubs because they're lonely, because they want companionship. And, you know, we've been absolutely astounded by the number of volunteer hours that have been given. You know, elsewhere, people have been really keen to volunteer to do something in the heart of their own community, the community that they live in, and I think that's really key to this. You know, people like that very local volunteering opportunity and that feeling that they're giving back something to the place where they live. So yeah, we hope we can do something really similar in Fenland. So I thought perhaps the place to start with this is obviously to tell you what we see a community living room as being. And you can see there that we think that they should happen in publicly accessible community buildings. So that can be community centres, village halls, church buildings, older persons day centres. And they're very much run by the community. So it's about people in a community supporting others in that community. So although we as Cambridgeshire Acre provide a lot of support to the volunteers who lead the community hubs, they're very much, sorry, community living rooms in this case, they're very much your community living room. The basic offer that everyone is going to provide is free refreshments, so free tea and coffee and perhaps biscuits as a minimum, but we've got lots of our hubs in our other parts of the county who've gone on and done far more than that. They can provide low-level social activities. We've found previously that people are really happy just to have a place to come together to chat. They're not particularly going to a living room because they want lots of sort of organised activities, because those things normally are already going on in your community. But just the place where people can come together and have a sort of informal chat with others is really seems to be what people want. But the thing that we sort of wrap into this whole community living room offer is this idea of information and advice. So we're trying to link the community living rooms into other organisations who can provide advice and support to people. And we provide the volunteers who run the community living rooms with some training to be able to signpost people to the right places. And I'm going to come on and tell you that there's also going to be some paid staff who will support that as well in the community living room project. And most importantly, these community living rooms are open to everyone. They're not about sort of discriminating. They're just in a community, and they're open to absolutely anyone who wants to come along, whether that's older people or young people or anybody who's working from home and just fancies getting out of the house for an hour or two. Anyone is welcome in a community living room. I think it's quite important also to say that we think that community living rooms are all going to be unique. That's certainly what we've found with the hubs elsewhere. Everyone has evolved at its own pace and in its own way, and it really reflects what the community who are coming along to that living room actually want. So I think that's something we expect to see here as well. In terms of what Cambridgeshire Acre can provide to you, so we have a role in this. This is a project that we're facilitating. The first thing that we'll do is we'll work with you to check that you're ready to host a community living room. So that's making sure that the building you're proposing to use is safe and got all the things it needs to be opened up to the public, but also as volunteers, you've got the right combination of volunteers in place to be able to move forward. We're really keen to ensure that the burden of running a community living room, it can't just ever fall on one person, because if you do that, then the moment that person wants a holiday or not feeling too well, the whole thing collapses. So we need a nice pool of volunteers at each community living room who can help support its running. We'll provide some training and support to volunteers, so some sort of initial training to get you up and running. We provide support with marketing and promoting your community living room, because it's no point just opening up your doors. People have to know that you're there and what it's about, because they might not have heard of a community living room before. So we can help with that. Most importantly, I think we can give you some funding support towards the operating costs. We know that most of the buildings that are going to be used for this are going to be charitable buildings or perhaps parish council owned buildings, and the last thing we want is for the burden, the costs of of running this community living room to fall back on that organisation. So we can provide you with some support towards that. I mentioned earlier that we were going to introduce some paid staff, and we're going to have 2 village agents working across Fenland. And these people will sort of be the intermediary, the link, if you like, between the volunteers running the community living rooms, the people attending the community living rooms, and the other organisations who are out there who we know we can provide really valuable support to the people who are coming along. So that's a new role, but we see that as being vital to making this successful. We'll be working with you to collect feedback from those who are taking part. As I say, this is a national government funded project, so quite naturally they obviously need to ensure they're getting good value for money, and they want to test whether, you know, as I say, they've funded lots of different projects, and what they want to find out from that is what really works in a community that's got problems with people being lonely and issues with low levels of volunteering. What are the things that people have done that really work? So what we obviously hope is that what we're going to try here really works, and then we can feed that back to government and hopefully see it replicated elsewhere. And the other thing to mention here is that as Cambridgeshire Acre, we run what we're calling now the Cambridgeshire Community Hubs Network. And that means that, you know, any hub, any community living room in this case, that operates to our model and receives this funding will be part of that network. And that's all about peer support. It's about coming together and swapping ideas and learning what works well elsewhere, and you know, hopefully collecting some ideas that you can take back to your own community living room. Just in terms of who else will be involved, as I say, you'll obviously be part of this Community Hubs network. We have, through the project that we've been running elsewhere, we've developed quite a lot of resources that we believe are going to be quite useful to those who will be running community living rooms. So, for example, we have a advice and support programme booklet that allows the people who are running the community living rooms to signpost people who can help them elsewhere. And as I say, there will be this opportunity to network together, which for us is quite important. We see it work quite well in East and South Cambridgeshire, and I hope the same will be true of the community living rooms in Fenland, that, you know, where one has a good idea, they'll share it with others, so that others can learn from it and perhaps roll it out in their own community living room. The other thing to say is obviously we're inviting lots of what I suppose I'll call the sort of statutory organisations. So, for example, the district council, the county council, the integrated care system, and then other sort of voluntary and community sector organisations who provide advice and support to community members. So we're networking with all those people, and they hopefully will be part of this project, so that, you know, when we do get people coming along to the community living rooms who need some additional support, we'll be able to signpost people and draw in the right people to provide that support. I suppose the next thing to think about is obviously if this sounds like something you'd like to do, and I appreciate you might have some questions, and we can cover those off in a moment, but I suppose just to cover off what you would do next if you are interested, is think about drawing some volunteers together. As I mentioned, probably you're going to need a minimum of 3 volunteers to get yourself up and running. So if you can find 3 people who'd like to be involved, you're in a really good place to move forward. Think about the venue you'd like to use. What's the best venue in your community? Then you can complete our online expression of interest form, and I will recirculate the link to that so that you can have a go at completing that if you're interested. Our next job after that will be just to assess the suitability of that space, make sure it's the right venue. And the other thing we do want to ensure, I guess, is that we've got quite a good geographic spread across the Fenland district. So obviously we don't want sort of, you know, necessarily 2 or 3 living rooms in the same village or the same town. You know, we want a nice spread so that it gives people plenty of options for where to go. Assuming that's all okay, then we'll invite you to take part in an online training session. And as I say, we need 3 people to take part in that from each community living room, so that you've got a nice group of sort of core volunteers, if you like, who've received that training. Obviously, if you can find more volunteers, we're really happy to train more people. But I think, you know, it comes back to this point. I don't ever want a volunteer to be carrying the whole burden on their shoulders. So if we can spread the load by having a nice group of volunteers, it makes it more sustainable. Once you've received training, then we can make you a grant funding offer, and there's some terms and conditions around that in terms of what you need to do to accept the money, but then we'll give you that grant funding, and that will be available to run your community living room for the next 2 years. And after that, you can open your doors and start welcoming people in. And obviously, as I say, we will work with you to help promote your community living room to your community, so that you get a nice bunch of people come along and hopefully join you for a tea or a coffee, as you can see with this group here. The other thing I was just going to mention is that the Cambridgeshire Community Hubs Network is on Facebook. So if you are on Facebook at all, I know lots of people aren't, but if you are, if you search for the Cambridgeshire Community Hubs Network, you should spot this page, this little icon, which is our sort of logo. And if you like or follow that page, then obviously you'll see messages that we put out promoting the different community hubs. I'll take these slides down in a second and we'll look at any questions, but I will circulate these slides to everybody as well, because at the bottom here you can just see that we are undertaking recruitment at the moment for the village agents who will operate in Fenland, and we're also looking for the person who will be those village agents line manager as well. So there's 3 roles here that we're looking for. We'd love to find somebody in Fenland to take on those roles. So obviously if you have networks where you can share the information about those roles, we'd be really grateful. I shall stop sharing, and if anybody's got any questions.
Thank you, Alison. I think it's well done and clear for the first bit of it. I'm sure we've got many questions. Does anyone want to start with a question, or don't have questions? How did it sound, that for you know, thinking about your own community, or what you were thinking about you might do in your own community or with your own community?
I suspect that I'm like a number of people already engaged in various ways in the community, and I suppose I'm interested in that I could maybe act as a kind of in informing others in the various groups I'm in contact with, to see can we generate interest. My own energy levels are a bit limited, so I've got to be careful about spreading too thinly.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it is about taking it back to your own groups and seeing if you can get enough people to come forward to sort of get started. What I should say, from what Alison said, it did seem quite involved, but we are used to working with volunteers at Cambridge Raker, so this is quite streamlined. You know, when Alison said online training, it isn't hours and hours and hours. It is
2 hours.
What you need to know in I think it's about 2 hours, isn't it, in a short time. So, you know, it is streamlined to get on with it, shall we say, and get things set up. It isn't sort of trying to make it a huge job. We really do just want to make it simple. And I think before we got the 38 hubs we had open in quite a short time, didn't we? The training,
about a month, 5 weeks perhaps, I think, between receiving the training and you know, they were opening their doors sort of more or less directly afterwards. So I think from the start of the project to sort of when we had the first volunteers trained and ready to open was about 5 weeks. So yeah, sooner we can get people trained, the sooner we can open the doors.
What kind of time scale, or what kind of months are you hoping for it to be open, or is it open all year round, or how do they normally work?
Open all year round, hopefully. I mean, I think we're probably open to looking at a bit more flexibility, because we do realise that sometimes volunteering can go in sort of fits and starts, but the idea is that they should be open year round.
Okay, so it's not just a winter warm space.
No,
it's a
hopefully we can get
constant community.
Yeah,
okay.
It started off with the warm hubs with a winter warm, but as soon as they got into it, everyone was going, oh, we can't just do this for winter, because actually there's going to be needs in the summer as well. So that's why it became a community hub. Because obviously we now can't call it a warm up, because it's not just opening in winter. And we found that the needs of the people coming were not so much about the cost of living. That did come into it, but they were more sort of complex, and a lot of it was just sort of loneliness and needing to have a chat with someone. And that the volunteers were fantastic at just listening to people, give them a cup of tea, and building their sort of people's trust in that sort of community. So yeah, I think they vary, don't they? We have had some closed down for the summer, and they're going to open in the winter. I think what Alison said, it's very much about your hub, your community, and what you think you need for your community, and every community within it is very different. Even of the 38, I think everyone was different. Some were running churches, they have different times, all that kind of thing, so it just depends what's going on in your community at the time. I think Kathy, you've got a question.
Yeah, I just wondered if we could sort of introduce ourselves. It'd be really interesting to find out who else is on the meeting call and what our sort of interests are. I mean, I'm happy to start.
Yeah, you can do. Yeah.
I'm Kathy Cornell, and I work for Care Network Cambridgeshire. I've been in post for 9 years as a community navigator for Fenland. So my job is literally knowing what goes on in Cambridgeshire, in Fenland, and signposting people to that. But prior to that, hello, Sean. We work together. I started in 1976 as a social worker with Cambridgeshire County Council, and apart from nipping over the border into Norfolk for 5 years, I came back, and I spent all my working life in Fenland. I live in Fenland, and I've had a passion, for just getting very angry about what has happened to people in Fenland, and I see it within my day-to-day job. And last winter was brutal.
Yes,
people. I mean, not just the cost of living crisis, which I have to say this winter is going to be even more challenging for some people, not everyone, but for some people. But the pandemic of loneliness, social isolation, and just disengagement. I think, we were so worried about COVID, and it forced everyone to sort of stay within their own homes. I mean, people have really struggled. Some people have to to come out and about, but we have this pandemic of social loneliness, and it is awful. And I see it and hear it day in, day out in my working life. And we lost so many groups because of COVID. I think Hunt's Forum did a report as we came out of the pandemic, and there were 84, I think, groups in Cambridgeshire, and over 50 of those were in Fenland that closed. And this project just sounds absolutely amazing. And
I think it is
any help and support that I can give in any shape or form. I do a lot of asset mapping, and I've got colleagues in Chatteris who are just waiting for tomorrow morning for me to report back on, because Chatteris has really not come out of the pandemic particularly well. I mean, I work very much with health colleagues, and we have been trying really hard to get more sort of groups, but transport is an issue. So to have the hubs in villages would just be wonderful. But also I wouldn't want to take away from the four, I mean, Fenland is obviously the 4 market towns which have all got their own identity, and the libraries were just absolutely brilliant last year, and I wouldn't want to take away from the work and everything that they've done. But it would be great if the hubs were in addition to the library, that the libraries didn't stop doing what they were doing, because they were doing amazing things in Fenland, especially March, which has just been great. If they if it was in addition, so that we could really spread it across the whole district, really.
I'm sure it will be, Kathy. I mean, we've worked quite closely with the library services in East and South Cambridgeshire, and the 2 offers are sort of very much complementary. And as you say, unfortunately, or fortunately, most of the libraries are in the market towns, but that does then mean it relies on people being able to travel to them, which isn't always possible. So if we can put our offer into the sort of into the villages, then hopefully that means that people aren't put off. If they can walk to their local community living room, then hopefully that's a bonus.
Yeah, because weekends are really difficult for people. So if there was a mixture of things going, you know, that everything can't just be Monday to Friday. If groups were thinking, because weekends are really, really challenging for people. And certainly, you know, it was mainly loneliness, and then people would open up about other things, and the amount of people that I met where I was able to do the household support fund and signposts on to, you know, we've got poor housing, so, you know, trying to get people's housing in the winter and in the summer as well, you know, trying to get housing improved. I mean, there's just a lot of help, but it is really, really difficult, you know, for people to find that help. It's so complicated.
Well, let's hope this is what this is about, really getting, because we know from East Cambs and South Cambs it did work, and we were able to get the help.
Yeah, but Fenland, you know, we need to focus on Fenland.
Yeah, I'm just saying there, because obviously I think Fenland will need more help, because in East Cambs and South Cambs they're not maybe quite the same communities, but we've had 16,000 people through the door, so it shows that, you know, there's pockets of loneliness and help needed across other areas as well. Ruth, do you want to I think you were going to come in, what you were thinking.
Thanks, Kirsten. My name's Ruth Houghton. I'm chair of Doddington Parish Council, for my sins, but there you go. I have to say that I do actually, like Sean, really enjoy it, and like giving something back to the community. Been at it for quite some time now, but whether or not I should continue for too much longer, who knows. Just wanted to say, first of all, thank you for getting Fenland involved, because we, we are very often seen as the poor relation of Cambridgeshire. I think probably for the wrong reasons, and I think a lot of it is to do with the fact that our district council are not particularly good at joining anything, and I'm quite sure, and I want to say that to their faces, not just behind their backs. But I think we're very lucky in Doddington. We obviously buck the trend. To hear Kathy's version of living in Fenland is not what happens in Doddington. During the pandemic, yes, some of our groups did collapse. I have to say that immediately we were allowed out again, we not only took back most of the groups that had been on before, but we've actually organised a few more. Now, that's nothing to do with the parish council, and it's nothing to do with me. It's very often been down to the fact that during the pandemic, a lot of the people who ran these groups, etc., in the village stepped back because they were elderly and they'd been doing it for a long time, and they gave up. But we've been really, really lucky because an awful lot of people have stepped up to the mark, taken over again, and if you like, refreshed them. So we've got an awful, if we've got one little organisation in the village called the 100th Club, which probably has been going for 60 years. It was to do with getting the over 60s out for trips out, etc. It has reorganised. It is now 40 to 50 members strong. And they do exactly what the warm hub that you're talking about do. So that's something that you need to consider is that, perhaps we need to get in touch with them and liaise with them and make the warm hub part of them, rather than trying to set up in opposition. Well, not in opposition.
That is what it is about, Ruth. We in some places where we do have groups that are already meeting, we've just boosted their meeting and their group, and as long as they do the training and that and we can support them and they that are open to all, and that it's all ages, we can work with them. So it doesn't have to be a completely new group. It could be a group that's already meeting that needs to be boosted or doing similar things, but could do more, perhaps with a bit of more support and obviously there's financial support here, so that it doesn't have to be a brand new group. So
and you also have to be very, very careful that you don't put somebody else's nose out of joint.
Yeah, exactly. If someone's already doing it in a village, you don't do another.
Doing, sort of thing.
Not difficult in a village, is it?
Yeah.
Or anywhere. Okay.
Went out with a light, but as I say,
Yeah, just to state that it doesn't have to be just a whole new group. It could be a group that already meets. And in fact, you know, some of the most success we had were groups that were sort of limping along a bit, and then we were able to support them, put a bit of money in, support them to open their doors perhaps for longer and that kind of thing, and open them to the whole community. And that then supported that group to go further with what they were originally doing.
I think what appeals to me most is the fact that you can help in bringing in other organisations that help the people in that group even more than the group is helping them, because very often it's just a question of meeting with friends, of sitting down and having a jolly good old gossip, having a cup of tea and whatever, and enjoying the experience. And I know our group, our 100th Club group, put on guest speakers and do all the stuff that goes with that, which is great, and they do trips out and one thing and another, but very often the people who are there could benefit from people with experience from outside of that group. So I think that's something that would work exceptionally well with what you're trying to do.
And again, we have kind of a menu of choices, if you like, and we let the volunteers choose which is the best or what's needed for the people that are going to that living room or that hub, because it's again very different across all of the county, and what people choose and what they need. So
I think Fenland is a problem because it's rural.
Yes,
and an awful lot of the poverty and the problems that come through are because people live way out in the fen, don't see anybody, and don't liaise with people, etc. And you know, all I can say is I've lived in Donington for 45 years of my life, and it's a great place to be. And it's very vibrant, and it doesn't, you know, with gracious respect to Kathy, it doesn't sound like the Fenland that she knows.
No,
at all. So
I think again,
we're really lucky.
I think the other thing, Ruth, is that I mean, I'm sure we'll discover the same issue in Fenland as we have in East and South Cambridge, which is so much has moved online now, particularly since I mean, look at this years, you know, before 2020, we'd have come to you in Fenland, had this meeting in a village hall, and you may or you may not have come. Nowadays we jump online and hopefully we get people online, but we've found very much through the hubs elsewhere that so many people are digitally excluded, you know, either because they don't have the money to you know, pay for expensive broadband and expensive phones and kits, etc., or they've just, you know, they've been left behind a little bit and they don't know how, and they're scared to even try. So you know, and so much of the advice and support that's provided these days is done online, you know. So again, it's something, you know, if we can bring some of that into the community living rooms and perhaps help people get online a bit more, or perhaps provide access to a laptop and somebody to sit next to you and show you how to do it, you know, that might be a way of helping people, you know, move forward a little bit. So
that's excellent. No, but as I say, I just would like to say thank you, because I know Alison will know that I moaned like mad at her when it first came out and said, why isn't it in Fenland?
We got there eventually.
We had to prove it worked elsewhere. That's the trouble.
No, that's right. Can I just ask, you know, how much interest you've had from Fenland in general over this?
We've had a couple of expressions of interest in so far, and then obviously the people who are here tonight. So I mean, we're looking for 10, you know, and that's doesn't have to be 10 next week. It can be 10 over a period of time. So you know, sometimes it's better to sort of get some going, and then other people can see how it works, and then perhaps they're inspired to do the same.
I know how difficult it is to get them involved. That's all I was.
No, we haven't had a bad response actually.
No, that's good.
I think it's been good. It takes time for things to get going. We don't want to rush. I would say we don't want to rush it, because it's better to get things right and the community to get it right, and make sure that they've got volunteers that want to come forward, etc., to do the first step. So that will all take time to speak to people and sort that all out, won't it? It won't happen overnight.
No, that's good.
I'm just going to ask, so Darren, you came on, I don't know where you're from. You were then on your camera.
Also from Doddington.
also from Doddington.
Oh, Darren Adams.
Sure.
Hello, yes, sorry for my lateness. It took me ages to get Zoom working.
Oh, it's okay. Don't worry. You missed the presentation, but we'll send that round. And Ruth, I don't know whether you two work together. You know each other.
Yes,
so,
we know each other.
Yeah, so you can sort of talk afterwards. And Helen, where are you from?
I'm here on behalf of St Wendreader's Church in March.
Ah, right. So what do you think for this and the church in March?
I think they're hoping to use the church or the church hall as a warm space and get people involved there. They already have quite a few groups going on in the church hall. So it's just bringing more people and opening up to people who need us and that kind of thing.
Yeah. So we've had some really good church ones, haven't we, Alison? Some really good church ones.
Really good church ones. I'm just thinking who we've got. We've got a church in Littleport that runs the food bank in the village. They've tacked on the community hub on the end of that, so it's sort of like people come for the food bank, but then they stay for the community hub, which has been nice, and they get huge numbers. I've just been looking at their numbers for the last couple of months, and they sort of regularly get 60 people at a session, which is just like amazing. I mean, and perhaps that's something I should also say is that we've seen hubs that have got a variety of sort of attendances. Some hubs get a regular core of 6 people come along, and some hubs get a regular core of sort of 20 or 30 people come along. And I know when we sort of first set the hubs up, people were really worried. It's like, we've got really low attendance, we've only got 7 people coming, and it's like, but that's 7 people who are coming out of their houses, coming together, supporting each other. They're not lonely. They're if they've got problems, they've got somebody to talk to. The vaccinators are coming in and offering them their flu jabs. We've got different people who can come in and help with sort of fuel debt advice. So if people are struggling with bills, etc., people will come into your community living room and offer that advice to people just by chatting to them. And that's what we find. The people aren't particularly saying, right, we want somebody to come along, stand out the front and give a presentation, but somebody from an organisation who's prepared just to come along, sit and have a cup of tea, talk to people informally, and through those conversations, then you hear something and you think, I can help with that. And then they're able to signpost the person to somebody who can give them the sort of specialist help they need. So I think it's what Kathy was saying, if we can bring that help to people and avoid the need for people to have to go out and search for it themselves, then so much the better.
I work in a primary school at the moment, and I do think from the children I see and the stories they tell me and things, there are a lot of people, not just in March, all in Fenland, but they tend to stick in their own town or their own village. Some of the children never go even to Chatteris or Huntingdon. They've never been there, even though they're like 9 years old, so they don't go to the beach. So they're very insular, like their whole families live in March, so they don't need to go anywhere else. So
I think that is particular in Fenland, actually.
I think it is, like,
we're told, make the market towns work together, but actually everyone wants their own thing in their market town for their people. And actually, this is about your own thing and making it the right thing for your community. That's why we don't have any kind of one size fit. It's different. It's not one size fits all in everything.
Could I comment at this point and just take us back? You were talking about the fact you'd like them to run the whole year, not just over winter. What would you say is the sort of average hours that you would be expecting a volunteer to offer? I mean, obviously a lot depends on how many volunteers you've got, how big the group is. I appreciate that, but do you have any sort of feel?
Yes, I can probably answer that. So elsewhere, we've got hubs that open, mostly they open for minimum sort of 2 hours a week. Some of them do sort of 3's probably typical. And then some open for sort of 6 hours. They do most of a day, but they were, I would say, are sort of the exception, if you like. So somewhere between 2 and 3 hours per week. And as you say, if you can get a pool of perhaps 12 volunteers. I know that's quite a high number, but then perhaps they only have to do 1 week a month each. If there's 3 of them, 3 at a time needed in a hub, then your commitment as a volunteer could be as little as sort of just the 3 hours once a month. But obviously, quite typically, we get volunteers who funny enough, what we've seen quite a lot of is people who first of all come along as an attendee, but they've enjoyed it so much they've morphed into a volunteer. So they're no longer coming sort of, they've ended up with a badge saying that they're a volunteer, and they're actually helping welcoming other people into the hub now. So we've seen quite a bit of that. But yeah, the commitment could be as much or as little as people want, really.
Okay, thank you.
And I think that from the feedback we've had, those that have come along and then become a volunteer, it's so much more meaning for them in their life. It makes it much more meaningful, and they feel so much more connected to the community. So that's a real win-win, that you can actually transfer into being a volunteer as part of this project from an attendee if you wish to do so.
It was quite the training. Sorry. The training to become a helper is available all the time, is it not?
Yeah, so obviously what we would hope to do is perhaps try and get a pool of people, so because obviously it makes sense to deliver it to as many people as we can sort of to begin with. But yeah, we can run regular sessions to upskill new volunteers. That's not an issue. And what was I going to say? I was just going to say something and it's completely gone. It'll come back to me. Sorry. Late in the day, my brain's going.
You wait till you get to my age, Alice. It starts at about 7:30 in the morning. Then.
We're there.
Yeah. Thank you. Not long now. Yeah. Oh, no.
Yeah, so we can train up as we go. We train people. We do ask for one person to be kind of the lead volunteer. I don't know if that's what you were going to say, Alice, because we need to be able to communicate with obviously somebody. So we do ask for one person to be the kind of responsible lead volunteer, and then the rest of them, there is little job roles. So we have welcomers, because it's so important to welcome people through the door and give a good welcome, and that's all part of the training. What other types of volunteers we have refreshment volunteers. They're very sort of easy jobs. They're not some people that help get the hall out ready and then put the chairs away. We suggest roles at night.
Oh, you're breaking up a bit, Kirsten. The other roles, I guess in communities, it's quite useful to have somebody who's perhaps on the community Facebook page, and you can say to them, would you help with promoting it to the community? As Kirsten mentioned, one of the things we found was that sometimes people were quite nervous about coming into, perhaps if it's in a village hall or a church they've never been to. People are a little bit sort of like, I don't know whether I really fancy that. But if you can then say, well, one of our volunteers will meet you at the end of the road and introduce themselves and bring you in, that can perhaps overcome one of the barriers perhaps to people. So people who are happy, chatty people who are happy to engage with people, I think that's really what you need. As Kirsten says, people to make the tea and coffee, or perhaps just help with that. It's really flexible, I think, is the point.
Dare I raise, looking at Wisbech, and I don't know if it's reflected in other of the market towns, but we do see, sadly, we've got quite a division. We've got quite a number of people who've come in from various other countries. And it seems to me that, and I've got to be careful about generalizing, but that for example, some of the locals feel I can't go into town anymore. Now, sorry, I'm being a wee bit around the houses here, but for example, could we think about, I can think of 2 little cafes in Wisbech run by non-English that seem to be struggling to really get off the ground. Is there any way that there could be some kind of a partnership with some of these little entrepreneurs to help them? And that would might serve as a meeting place for the locals, those who've lived here, and some people who've come in. Because there are now, it seems to me, a number of older people. Maybe it's the people from overseas are bringing in perhaps a parent, and I don't know how much, but I see a bit of this around, to link up and begin to kind of pull communities together.
I mean, we can't support if they're, I don't know if those cafes are community cafes or they're commercial, or they're commercial businesses. Obviously, with this funding, we couldn't support commercial businesses because we wouldn't. It's government funding. We wouldn't be allowed to. But if they're there, you could ask them to sort of support the hub by coming along and doing the refreshments or something like that.
See, one of these people, and now I've only been in there once, but it's actually within Wisbeach Castle, which is
right. That might be that might be an ordinary. I don't know whether that's commercial or voluntary. If it's a charity running a community cafe, I think that would be fine. But if it's actually a commercial business, I don't think. Well, we couldn't fund that through this because this is sort of government funding, and I know that wouldn't be allowed out of this funding. There is other support, which is kind of business support, which might be another program they could get help from, but I think this it wouldn't fit because this is very much about community and voluntary efforts.
Right.
Can I just ask about your funding as well? Does, when you apply, say if you're going to be open 2 hours a week, is that all on the application, or if you're going to say open every day, is the funding the same, or do you match it up to how many hours people are going to be?
Yeah, yes, it would be a grant, and it would be based on, we would work with you to work out what funding you needed. Obviously there is a ceiling, which we obviously a cap on the level of funding we can give, but yes, we would look and see what's needed by each community living room.
Okay.
That
would be on a depending on how many hours you open, etc.
Yeah. And what your operating costs are. I mean, for example, to heat a big hall attached to a church might cost, you might have a higher operating cost than a small village hall, so we need to be fair to everyone. We can't just go, well, it's a blanket amount. We need to look at that.
Okay. Do we have any other questions at this stage? Hopefully that's infused people and not put them off, and infuse them to fill in the expression of interest form, because that would be the next stage. Alison will send that round again if you haven't got that. Then from that, the next thing that happens, we would have an individual conversation with you, wouldn't we, Alison, to help guide you through the form, the sort of where you're going to hold it form. So just to look at what you've got in that building. It's a sort of checking health and safety, that kind of side of it, because obviously we need to be assured of that in whatever hall it is or whatever community building it is. And then from that, it's really about
and the training comes next.
And then once that's done, it's about getting the doors open. I make it sound simple, but it's I hopefully it isn't that difficult. I
suppose the thing to say is just that we're there every step of the way. We've held the hands of the people who've done this elsewhere. This is not sort of like, okay, you've had your training, now off you go. We would work with you throughout the whole period of the project. So please don't put off by thinking it's a big task. We can work with you and take it step by step.
And then we will have people out. As we said, we've got those jobs, so we have people out on the ground that can come to your hub and work with you at that sort of level. But we also have these kind of online networking events. That's so we can keep you up to date with things that are available for the hub. So this sort of checking in with other organisations. We have had guest speakers, haven't we, come along and from other agencies to certain organisations to speak about what they can provide and to kind of really help make those connections into the community from those other organisations. So that's the kind of why we ask people, and we usually did that once a month, people coming together online just to do that. And we also feed back at that point about how we're getting on with the project and how things are going, and also how you can then all chat to each other as well. If you've got to share any sort of successes or things you want to share that are going in a certain way, you can all talk to each other as well. We find that really useful for everybody as it goes along, so you don't feel totally isolated in your one village doing it. It is a kind of more of a team response to it, and we're there to support.
Justin, can I ask you, do East and South Cams get together so that when you have these online community meetings, is there an East one and then a South one, or do you have one that is for everybody?
So we've had both, actually. We've had East and South, and then we've also had it for everybody.
I think it would be quite useful for us as newbies.
Yeah, we will through that community hubs network.
People who've been doing it.
Yeah. I think through that community hubs network, we'll put it together, because actually they're further ahead, and there has been some really good ideas from the community in East and South Cams where people have gone doing different things and different activities, and so we will put that together through that idea of that community hubs network. That won't be so frequent, but we will bring
that's fine. It doesn't want to be too frequent, actually. People get bored with it, don't they?
Yeah, put people off if it's too every night or something.
Well, they just think everybody else is too clever, so they're not going to join in anyway.
Yeah but and again there we can ask somebody to give a talk about their hub and what they do. People like to talk about what they've achieved, so that's a really good way of sharing, I think.
Yeah, it's good.
Okay, so I think the next steps after if you're still interested, or you're thinking about it, or you need to speak to some other volunteers, then come back with that expression of interest form. If you really have difficulty finding the free volunteers, don't let that put you off. Come back to us, and then we'll talk to you about how you might be able to find those free volunteers if there's a difficulty, because sometimes people don't step forward straight away, but there might be ways, or we might even know people in that community that you don't know on our systems, and that we offer our other projects we work with, maybe in your community, that we might be able to help you with. So just come back to us if there's difficulty getting the 3, but if you get the 3, obviously fill in the expression of interest, and we can get going. Is there anything?
Just ask if we put a form in, haven't we, Kirsten, I believe?
I think we've had a form. Yeah.
Perfect.
We have had a form from 2 forms, have we had? One might be yours, I think.
So I did one as well.
Oh,
check.
Is this something we can work together on, Ruth?
Yeah, we can't have more than one in each village.
Yeah, no, Darren, I think you and I need to talk, don't we?
Yeah.
The one I've had from Doddington came from Hilton Fisher.
Oh, that's right. Yes. No, that's right. That was me, actually. In
disguise?
Name, yes.
You're in disguise.
No, because we had a warm hub last year, and Hilton was the one who was in charge of it and who ramrodded it. So I put it in his name, because he hopes to be here tonight but couldn't actually make it. Otherwise, gosh, there would have been 3 of us. Takeover bid.
Yeah, you're definitely enthusiastic there.
Yeah, one in Doddington, definitely.
Yeah. You're okay with March? You're all right with
we're the other one. Can I just ask though, you said the 3 volunteers, is it 3 volunteers at each time the hub is open?
We think that's safest to operate. There's because there are things to think about, like what happens in the event of an emergency. What if somebody's taken ill? What if there's any safeguarding issues? So to protect yourselves as a group of volunteers, I would say 3 volunteers at each session is going to keep you well covered.
Yeah.
No, good stuff.
And you're okay with speech with the
you'll spread the word, for even if you can't do it yourselves, perhaps you'll spread the word with others for us.
And Kathy, you said you were going to Chatteris, didn't you?
Yes, I've got people lined up for
because that's where we haven't heard from, and I think you're right. I think one in Chatteris would be good. So
I think it really would. Yeah. I suppose it's very different for me, because I only get to talk to people who are really struggling.
Yes, yeah.
And unfortunately that is an awful lot of people who are invisible, and they are not known to other groups, because sadly a lot of people can't get out. This is the problem.
Yes, I can understand.
But, there's certainly big issues in some of the other villages, but Chatteris, as I said, working really closely with my health colleagues. So I will send them an email at the end of this meeting, and Just give a quick resume. So where can they find the form?
So what I was just going to come in there, Kathy. So what I'll do is obviously, hopefully, if so long as Zoom hasn't let me down again, we'll have the recording of this session. We'll have the slides from this session and the link to the expression of interest form. So tomorrow I will send a follow-up email to you all. So you'll all get that. And then obviously, Kathy, probably the easiest thing is for you then to forward that on to any colleagues.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Make it easy for you.
And the other thing I was, Alison had it on her last slide that we are advertising some employment, some jobs, and those village agent jobs. We would really like those people to come from Fenland and be part of that community. So we've only just started advertising those 2 jobs today, but we will actually be posting them ourselves on Facebook pages and things in the community to try and drive that recruitment. But if you have networks or you know anyone or whatever, please do share those jobs. There's a job pack on the Cambridge Acre website, and then there's this manager role, which is a community and wellbeing manager, which will be someone we're putting in place to manage all of these across the Cambridgeshire. Again, if you know anyone or you've got networks, if you could share those jobs for us, I'd be very grateful, because it's quite difficult.
I'm so happy to put them on parish council websites as well.
Yeah, anything like that. I mean, this is local employment, and it is working with the local community. The thing is, it is quite difficult to recruit at the moment. So we want to get as far as wide as we can, as best we can, and networks are always the best way to do it.
I don't think it's going to be that difficult, because sadly, some colleagues that I know, their projects have lost funding.
Right, yeah.
So it's actually going to be incredibly experienced community workers who are going to be looking for employment. So in Fenland, so it may actually be. Yeah, when you said about paid employment, I was really interested.
Okay, well, that's great, Kathy.
I'll make sure.
Point them to our website, please, because there's going to be more jobs on there. So
I'll put the link in the email that I send around.
That's.
Can I make a plea? Can I make a plea? The colleague who earlier on in the evening was talking about what I would call internet exclusion. In training these agents, if you can get people who, among their skill set, they've got the ability to help people, because it's a real problem of people just being locked out of their community, and this juggernaut coming down the line at us saying either you get on the internet or else you're excluded is a real source of anger and contention among people who feel just isolated and excluded.
It's definitely what we've found in those other hubs, and hopefully volunteers can help them, but also the staff can help them. And we will look for other funding to try and do more in the kind of digital space.
Thank you.
But at the moment we've got enough with this on to just get this going. But we will look for that. It's on our radar at Cambridgeshire Acre, particularly in rural areas.
But that could serve as an attraction to get people to come in.
Yeah, I think
hey,
you're
I'm
right.
going to be heavily equipped.
Yeah.
And so it could be a carrot to get people through the door and think, oh golly, this is good. This is really helping me where I need help. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, it does need to tie together.
Funnily enough, one of my hubs today, they reported to me that because I've asked them about the ages of the people who come to their hubs, and this particular hub said everybody who comes to our hubs over the age of 60. And then one of the other questions that I'd asked them was, have you got any plans for the future? And this particular hub said, yes, we're going to run a session on how to get the most out of your mobile phone, because we've got a lot of people who come to the hub who've been bought mobile phones by their children who haven't got a clue. So we're going to have a session where we're all going to work out how to use our mobile phones. So I mean, perfect. Absolutely perfect.
Yeah, and a lot of the health services now, like, I don't know, booking the GP and all that, it's all just gone online, hasn't it?
Yes.
People are really struggling with that.
So don't get started on the National Health Service, whatever.
Yeah.
And banks are all going online
as well. Yeah.
They're all closing down.
Yeah. Even in the market towns, they're closing down, in the bigger ones now, aren't they? So okay, well, I thank you all for your participation. It's been a good discussion and really a good starting point to this project, I think, Alison, isn't it?
Yeah, thank you so much.
Have you
Thank
also
you
on
very
here
much
and
indeed.
talking
Very
to us
useful.
and that. So we'll be in touch. Any questions you think of afterwards? Well, it's always the question you think of when we've left, isn't it? So if anything you think of, do come back to us and we'll endeavour to answer it, and yeah, keep working with you till we hopefully can open the door of our first community living room in Fenland.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Mhm.
All right. Well, have a nice rest of the
Thank you,
evening.
everybody.
And,
Thank you very
thank
much.
you. Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Karen, I'll be in
Bye.
touch.
Adios. Adios.